In a classroom, a boy sits with a heavy heart, writing down his thoughts. He wanted to remember his time at school before he left this world. The same day on the school rooftop, three classmates sing Happy Birthday, but it's not a joyful occasion. They're hurting him, kicking him while he's down. They make him eat cake off the ground and record it, all for laughs. When the bell rings, they leave, tossing his shoes aside, hurrying so the teacher won't catch them. But one classmate, Lee Do-yoon, pauses to ask the boy to bring cake again tomorrow for another birthday celebration next year. The boy agrees on the outside, but in his mind, he's not happy about it. Dajun searches for his shoes and gets scolded by a teacher. The other kids look at him, some with pity, some with mockery, making him feel utterly embarrassed. It's as if he's standing naked in front of the whole school. He endures more days of school with these bullies, but he can't take it anymore. He just wants to break free. In a letter to his family, he pours out his heart, confessing his pain and despair. He wishes those bullies, especially Lee Do-yoon, weren't part of his life. He's sorry he let his grades slip due to the torment he's endured. He wonders about death and finds some comfort in imagining his main bully suffering as he goes down. He knows he won't be there to witness it, but the thought brings him a strange sort of happiness. Then there's his family, all lost in their own worlds. His brother's consumed by his studies, his sister is busy with her phone. He doubts his parents even care about him, given how he sees himself as less capable than his siblings. Before he goes, he wants to share his final wishes. At home, they sit for dinner, each in their own bubble. His brother is all about studying, not even noticing the boy's distress. When the boy tries to speak, his father brushes him off, more concerned about the TV. But the news on TV catches their attention. It's about a school tragedy. A student fed up with bullying has committed a horrible act, taking the lives of 7 classmates. The police reveal his identity as he faces the public, surrounded by questions and cameras. He said he wasn't a killer and explained why he did what he did. He went through tough times that pushed him to extremes. He listed the people who hurt him, no longer seeing them as human. He talked straight into the camera, speaking to others who suffered like him. He believed it was time to stop asking for forgiveness because no one cared about them. He told them to take charge and do whatever they had to do to survive. He said if they didn't want to die, they might have to take a life. Dajun stared at the TV, feeling like the person was talking to him. Before we continue, take a moment to answer the question of the day. Do you like school setting in Manhwa? Comment down below for a chance to be shouted out. Now back to the recap. The press conference paused as the boy got upset. People argued about the case when they found out the one responsible was also a victim. Dajun's dad disagreed with what the boy did, not focusing on the bullying. But deep down, Dajun agrees with the boy. Why was he the only one suffering? That night he read about hurting others and pictured himself doing it. But he also thought about the consequences and knew he couldn't do it. He didn't want to feel this way. He just wanted a normal life. He wished someone else would do it. He didn't want to die at the hands of Do-yoon. So he found tools and stabbed his pillow. He swore he wouldn't be the one to die. It would be Do-yoon. He kept telling himself that. The next day in class he started to think he could do it another time. As long as the bullies left him alone, he wouldn't need to act. But then they hit him, wanting him to bring a cake for his upcoming birthday. Dajun felt anger rise and touched his pocket, searching for something sharp. He wondered if now was the right moment. Should he hurt the leader first or just Do-yoon? He had practiced and was sure he could do it, but when he finally held the object in his hands, the boy waiting for an answer touched his shoulder, causing Dajun to look up. As he looked into the boy's eyes, he realized he couldn't do it. It was like Pavlov's dog, an experiment in which a dog was repeatedly fed after hearing a bell, and as a result the dog started salivating just by hearing the bell. In his case, after years of being beaten, he had developed a conditioned fear. Everything happened just by looking at his face. Fear started in his neck and then paralyzed his whole body. The entire plan he had formed in his head vanished. Seeing that he had brought nothing, Do-yoon started hitting him, and the boy simply hid the object he had intended to use as a weapon. He hated himself. The boy kept hitting him, warning him that he wouldn't escape easily, that they would have a party, and he had to follow them after school. After classes, the boys went to a building under construction. When they arrived, there were some cans of drinks, soda, alcohol, bags of chips, and instant soups. The boy put his arm around Dajun's shoulder, telling him to cheer up because he had something better prepared for him. Dajun refused because he had never drunk before, but declining was not an option. Do-yoon started preparing a special drink in a glass, not only adding the mentioned items, but also some used socks, dirt, and a bit of saliva. The boy had to drink it all or they would hit him. When Dajun tried to refuse, he received a slap and had to muster the courage to drink it. The others laughed and started recording, but he couldn't bear it for long and ended up vomiting. The leader signaled the other two to fetch more things and drinks while he continued to torment the boy for throwing up his mixture. Dajun felt really dizzy and sick, but the bully made him drink from the bottle. Dajun had had enough. He decided he couldn't take it anymore and sprinted away, breaking the bottle in his haste. Even though he knew he'd probably get beaten up again the next day, he couldn't stand it any longer. But before he could get far, Doyun caught up to him, throwing him down and hitting him. The pain was intense, and Dajun regretted running away. He wondered if it might have been better to just drink and end it all. The bully yanked him back by his hair, and Dajun despised the never-ending cycle of pain and fear. He couldn't bear to keep living like this, constantly getting hurt. Just the sight of the bully's face sent shivers down his spine, and he felt helpless. But when the bully's face turned away, something changed. Dajun saw an opportunity. Without the bully's face in his line of sight, he found courage. He pushed the bully with all his might, just as a truck passed by. Meanwhile, the two boys who had been sent on errands returned to a scene of commotion, a crowd and an ambulance. As they got closer, they saw their friend injured. Meanwhile, Dajun was running, his fear fading as the effects of the alcohol wore off. He shook with a mixture of adrenaline and triumph. He had done it. He had stood up, fought back, and survived. It was the beginning of a new chapter. He knew he would make it. Lying in bed after the accident, he wrapped himself in his thoughts. He wondered why he hadn't fled, haunted by the image of the fallen boy he left behind. But he couldn't escape the need for justice. Revenge fueled his thoughts. The next day, on his way to school, he braced himself for the worst, expecting it might be his final day. He questioned what might have transpired since his departure. He just wished for a classroom free of his tormentor. Contemplating the consequences, he hesitated at the classroom door, half expecting police waiting for him. But as the door swung open, everything appeared as usual. He walked to his desk, noticing the normalcy around him, except for Doyun's vacant seat. And as he sat down, he knew things were going to change from now on. The teacher told the class about the car accident, how the boy was hurt badly and unconscious. They said he'd been reckless when he crossed the road. Dajun felt guilty about it, but now, at least he could finally rest without worrying. He thought he could live normally for a little while. Throughout the day, the boy went to classes and everything was calm. He didn't know what to do during breaks, but then he remembered he used to read a lot. He used to do it in middle school, but stopped in high school. As he read, tears came out, and a kid teased him. They mentioned seeing him with Lee Do-yoon the day before, but it didn't go further than that. The classroom felt different to him. They used to bother him, even when the main bully wasn't there. But now, it felt like they didn't want to fight anymore. Even the other bullied kids seemed relaxed. The room was peaceful without Lee Do-yoon. Just when he started thinking he might be okay and not get caught, a police car drove into the school. Everyone made jokes, but Dajun was worried. A bit later, a boy came to get him from class. In the teacher's lounge, a police officer put handcuffs on him. Another officer read his rights. He was being held for trying to hurt someone badly. The teachers were shocked and didn't understand. He had been living in a happy dream, but it all went away. After that, everything felt heavier. The world kept reminding him about what happened. He went to trial and they said he was guilty, but because he had been bullied a lot and had been drinking when it happened, he got probation for 2 years. They said he didn't really have a choice because they made him drink alcohol, but he still wasn't happy. Later, at a school meeting, they told him he was kicked out. When he left, other students asked him questions. They wanted to know if he would keep studying and why he didn't go to a special school. He just looked at the ground. Even though the things they said bothered him, he thought things would be better once he got home, or at least that's what he hoped. Once at home, his father kicked him out. He didn't want to see him again. None of his family members even bothered to see him. Dajun was shattered, but there was nothing he could do, so he left home crying. The night couldn't get worse, but it started to rain, and Dajun just walked without knowing where to go. Why did he have to go through all this when he just wanted a normal life? Now, he had nothing. When he crossed an alley, Lee Do-yoon's friends were waiting for him, and they started beating him together. The boy felt that his body couldn't take it anymore, and he couldn't even escape. There were too many of them. Dajun remained on the ground as one of the boys stepped on his head and asked him how he would compensate for what he had done to his friend. He would accept an apology in place of Do-yoon, and if he didn't, they would keep hitting him. But Dajun could only think about all the times he had been beaten and pushed around. He wasn't worse than them just because he had defended himself. Even under the threat of the boy, Dajun shouted that he hadn't done anything wrong, but that only earned him another beating. The boy fiercely hit our protagonist, who remained stretched out on the ground. Dajun managed to touch an object with his fingers and grabbed it. It was a brick, which he used to defend himself, and the aggressor fell to the ground. But the boy kept hitting him again and again, while the other men watched. Dajun would no longer feel guilty. He knew what he had to do to get out of that mess and survive. He had to kill. The other boys began to threaten him, wielding sticks and heading straight for him. The hero gripped the brick tighter as punches rained down. He got brave, bashing one attacker with the brick, but another slammed him from behind. Down he went, and they didn't stop. 2 guys held his arms, the third ready to strike, when a strange man appeared, holding ramen. He told them off for invading his home, the construction site. They asked him to leave, he seemed to, but suddenly, soup drenched the hero, and a kick knocked him out. The man took out the gang one by one with odd tricks. He teased the last one, asking if he'd fight with a stick. The man had paper. The kid worried it was a knife, but it was chopsticks. Kicks and ear-pulling followed. Dajun marvelled as the man beat the gang. They fled. The hero went to thank him, but the man called him property and was mad about spilled ramen. Dajun saw a chance. He'd learned to fight from the man in return for more ramen. He wanted to be strong. Later, the man ate soup, and the hero shared his story. The man praised him but refused help. The hero hadn't fought much. To the man he was a greenhouse flower, too safe. The world was scarier. The hero kept pushing, copying the man's every move, even scavenging and sleeping outside. He wanted to be strong like the man. Doubts came, but watching the man fight inspired him. The man noticed he followed and asked if he still wanted to learn. The hero said yes. The man had a deal. To learn, he must kill Park Jung-hyun, an aggressor. The hero didn't get it. Why suffer alone? The man said hitting with a brick wasn't enough. He needed real revenge, not just a rabbit fight. Jung-hyun searched for info on the construction worker they attacked. Unseen, the hero waited to strike. It was his turn. Memories from his past surged. Jung-hyun apologized after he did something embarrassing. He pulled down his pants in front of the girls and splashed water on himself while they were in the bathroom. He said he felt sorry and explained he suffered when Dajun felt pain. Then he raised his hand to shake Dajun's hand. Doyun, another person there, told Dajun to forgive Jung-hyun. Doyun thought Jung-hyun's apologies were real. Dajun agreed and shook Jung-hyun's hand. But Jung-hyun's grip was super strong. He used to play baseball, but he got kicked out for being too aggressive. When Jung-hyun squeezed Dajun's hand really hard, it hurt a lot. Jung-hyun said he felt better now after saying sorry. He even promised to apologize like that every day. Dajun was on a roof, a little higher than Jung-hyun. He needed to stay calm and stick to his plan. He realized Jung-hyun had been bullying him just to show off. This made Dajun angry, and he decided to jump down at him. He wanted to knock Jung-hyun down. Surprisingly, Dajun succeeded in knocking Jung-hyun down. It was easier than he thought. But he got too emotional and lost focus. Jung-hyun got up and hit Dajun back. He hit much harder than before, 3 times stronger. Dajun was in a lot of pain, but Jung-hyun didn't stop. He kept hitting and telling Dajun to bring the construction hero. Jung-hyun was mad that Dajun had taken him down with just 1 hit. Meanwhile, a mysterious man was watching the fight from far away. He thought the fight had started well but was turning bad. Dajun felt more pain than usual. Jung-hyun had been going easy on him until now. Dajun was afraid the cool guys would treat him like a broken toy. Dajun regretted coming to fight. Then, Dajun threw a bag of garbage at him. It hit his face and confused him. This surprised the mysterious man who was watching. He realized it was the right moment to attack. Now he couldn't see him, and although this wasn't entirely true, the boy went on and grabbed him by the clothes. But the big guy hit him to break free, trapping him against a wall. Dajun tried to blind him, but before his fingers could reach his face, the other man gripped his hands. The mysterious man noticed the boy copying moves from fights he'd seen, but he was doing it clumsily. Dajun glared at his attacker as he struck back, feeling tricked. He had taken their abuse for so long, even got kicked out because of them. If he could, he'd wipe them all out. He remembered the time the mystery man told him to hit Jung-hyun. If he didn't, the man would go, but he didn't back down. He said he'd try. The man figured it was tough due to the size difference, but things could change. In a street fight, strategy didn't matter. He'd do what he had to. The man seemed to lose hope, about to leave when the ex-baseball player hesitated. The boy shoved him a makeshift knife from newspapers. The big guy wasn't falling for it, but when he took the weapon he looked surprised and the boy grinned. Seemed he really had a weapon. It was hard to believe someone just appeared with a knife, freezing people with fear. The boy kicked the big guy, who bolted the other way. The man watching thought if the boy could fake a knife he might have noticed its texture, but going by his reaction, maybe he didn't. Dajun was crazier than he thought, and that could turn bad. Jung-hyun took a wrong turn, ending up in a dead-end alley as he ran. Dajun followed, seeming to lose control, fueled by anger. He got closer, landing hard hits on him. The boy getting hit wouldn't lose to what he saw as a loser. If only he could do something. So when Dajun kicked him, he acted hurt and begged to stop. But the boy who'd suffered so much wouldn't quit for that. How many times had he endured, always begging, and they never stopped? Tears streamed down Dajun's face, memories too painful to bear flooding his thoughts. The man watching from a distance thought he was victorious, seeing the boy's distraction and another boy taking charge. A knife gleamed in the air, threatening to strike, but it landed on the boy's leg, revealing it was just a ruler. Dajun grinned, realizing it was a trick. Mocking himself for fearing a ruler, he was pummeled by the furious other boy. Impressed, the man decided to step in. Pouring a drink on the angry Jung-hyun's head, the man grabbed his attention. The man's face was familiar. He was from the construction site. Enraged, Jung-hyun charged, but a swift kick sent him crashing down. Turning to Dajun, the man questioned what would have happened without his help. The boy blamed himself, still on the ground, fists meeting the earth in frustration. Crouching down, the man posed the question again. Did he want strength even if it meant getting beaten? The boy nodded, and the mysterious man granted another chance. But this time the training would be harder. They ventured through an unknown neighborhood. Dajun's curiosity piqued. Explaining that true danger lay beyond school, the man halted by a house where perilous people congregated. The man's warning lingered as he shoved the boy inside, tasking him with surviving before disappearing. The boy knelt, perplexed by the challenge, observing those around him. He recounted Cho Hangul bringing him there to learn how to fight. Surrounded by skeptical boys, he denied any skills. A long-haired boy offered him shelter for the night, the red-haired one curious if he possessed any talents. Dajun confessed his inadequacy, but his shelter came at a price household chores in exchange for meager meals. As days passed, he explored the menacing neighborhood, realizing its violent nature surpassed any other. He wondered if all gangster territories were this brutal. By accident, he made eye contact with a man who was with a group and his girlfriend. Dajun immediately looked away and tried to ignore them, but the man stood in his way and started bothering him. He was only trying to intimidate him and show off in front of the girl, but unlike before, Dajun wouldn't let himself be stepped on again. When the guy prepared to hit him, Cha Dayob appeared from behind to defend him, warning him not to get involved with those kinds of people and to finish cleaning up. But the man wouldn't stand for that humiliation and went after Dayob despite his friend's warnings. Kim Taek, the boy with long hair, was with him, but fearlessly he took out a knife and headed towards them. In 2 moves, the red-haired boy left him lying on the ground, and everyone was astonished. Dayob asked if anyone else wanted to fight, but the others ran away. Dajun wondered if all of Cho Hangul's friends were as strong as he was. After this, Hyung Tae, the man who attacked them before, was furious, complaining about Cha Dayob and his group when a man from the shadows approached him, offering his help to take down the gang. Back at home, Dajun was sleeping when he woke up to go to the bathroom and smelled gas. He quickly left the house and accidentally hit Hyung Tae with the door, knocking him to the ground next to the gas cylinder he was trying to use to suffocate them. Quickly, Dajun ran away, and Dajun chased after him, thinking about how Cha Dayob had told him he was useless, and he affirmed that there was something he wanted to do. Hyung Tae kneeled to catch his breath and wondered to himself how the bastard, referring to Dajun, was okay. Dajun walked up to him and said he didn't sleep in the same room as the others. He also shared that he wanted to beat up guys like him. A few days before the fight, Dayob and Dajun were on a rooftop. Dayob wondered why Dajun bothered him to learn fighting. Dajun said he wanted to take out people who messed with him in one hit, like he did with Hyung Tae's gang. Dayob didn't want to teach him, so he gave him a rope, telling him to work hard with it. Dajun asked how long Dayob trained, and he bragged about doing 100,000 jumps easily. The next day, Dayob looked for Dajun. He thought Dajun might have done the jumps as he suggested, but that seemed too silly. To his surprise, Dajun was there, tired from jumping all night. He asked Dayob to let him stop at 47,000 jumps. Dayob dismissed him, wondering why Dajun was trying so hard. Back to the present, Dajun tried to hit Hyung Tae, but he defended himself and hit back hard. He tried to run, but Dajun pursued, and he got hit by Hyung Tae again. Hyung Tae thought about leaving the neighborhood to escape Cho Hangul's gang and the mysterious man's gang. He almost revealed the gang's name, but Dajun grabbed his leg, making him fall down the stairs. Dajun asked about the gang, but noticed a cut on his cheek from Hyung Tae's knife. He remembered Cho Hangul facing armed opponents before and realized the danger. Hyung Tae mocked him and tried to stab, but Dajun narrowly dodged and fell into garbage. Hyung Tae threw another stab, seeming impossible to dodge. In the backyard of the house, the gang starts regaining consciousness. Kim Taek realizes who attacked them when he sees the gas cylinder nearby, and another member, a purple-haired guy with covered eyes, asks if it was Dajun who saved them. He notices he's the only one not there. Dayob confirms this, stating that Dajun went to chase his attacker. Taek doubts his victory, but their apparent leader assures him that he will return. He then remembers when he was unconscious, and Dajun slaps him hard, asking him to wake up, declaring that now they all owe him for risking his life to get them out of the gas-filled room. Although he notices that the redhead hasn't fully regained consciousness, he says that now that he saved them, they have to teach him how to fight, divide the household chores, let him get a job not to be a burden, and even participate in their food feasts. Dayob pays little attention to his requests, so Dajun suggests that they should acknowledge him if he brings back the guy who gassed them. The redhead still doesn't accept the deal, but Dajun takes advantage of his weakness to take his hand and make a pinky promise as a way to force him to agree. After this, he runs away from the scene, ending the memory with Dayob thinking that he won't go down without a fight. Back to reality, Dajun tightly holds the knife with which the gangster wanted to cut him, not caring about the damage it causes, and without letting go, he pushes him against a fence that separates them from falling into the void. Hyungtae thinks that even though he looks like a nobody, Dajun has the eyes of a madman. When Dajun takes hold of his arm, he realizes that he's trying to use the same move with which Dayob threw him over the fence. He mockingly tells him that it won't work and tightens his grip on the knife. However, Dajun laughs that he believed that was his plan, and before the gangster can respond, he makes a big jump that throws both of them off the edge. Before we continue, let's take a moment to shout out at jail. A 7,820 who commented, "Name survive on a deserted island with beautiful girls. No need to thank me," on our desert island video. Thanks for commenting. They descend the precipice, hitting against the wall. Hyungtae lets go of the knife as he falls. Dajun lands a few steps away from the gangster and gets up first, so he seizes the opportunity to pick up a brick from the ground and hit him with it. But as he is about to do it, he notices that his enemy hit his head against a cement bollard when he fell, leaving him unconscious. This leaves him stunned for a few seconds before he raises his arms with pride and declares that he has won. With teary eyes, he thinks that he finally managed to win against a gangster he thought he could only defeat in his dreams, and he wonders if he has a natural talent for fighting, or if he can now take on anyone who messes with him. Although his inner monologue is interrupted when he notices that the knife Hyungtae was carrying stabbed into his abdomen during the fall. In pain, he falls to the ground, gradually losing consciousness, thinking that despite believing he got his revenge, his actions were all in vain. When Dajun opens his eyes again, he finds Dayob and the rest in front of him, in a hospital bed, covered in bandages. He starts recounting how after becoming unconscious, the fugitive family found him, and thanks to them, he was able to safely recover in the hospital. A doctor stated that the knife wound was shallow, and he actually passed out due to the impact of the fall. His head was spinning when he woke up, but the faces around him were familiar. However, there was no trace of Hyungtae when the group found him. At that moment, Dayob, the cheeky member of the gang, teased him, saying that he lost and shouldn't pretend otherwise. Dajun explained that despite his loss, the group agreed to fulfill the promise he made with the redhead. While Taek praised him for his brave jump to defend Hyungtae, Cho Hangil, the older member with a serious demeanor, arrived. He wasted no time and asked if Dajun was ready to learn how to fight, or if he was planning to chicken out. Determined not to back down, Dajun stated with newfound resolve that he wanted to start training immediately after getting discharged. As they left the hospital, Dajun recounted how the gang fulfilled, as a sign of gratitude, his second biggest wish after learning to fight. They had cooked up a feast on the rooftop of their makeshift home. Taek was at the grill, sizzling bacon, and he chuckled, telling Dajun that he could have asked for something much better than pork belly. Dajun laughed, replying that it was the best bacon he'd ever seen. While they ate, Dayob couldn't resist a comment, suggesting that if someone saw Dajun devouring the food like that, they would think they were starving him. Dajun playfully swatted at him, but the girl in the group wasn't having it. She scolded Dayob for being the one who came up with the idea to feed him only tuna, causing Dajun to burst into laughter. Dayob defended himself, saying it was something they all agreed on. The other two guys chimed in to comfort Dajun, telling him not to worry. He wiped a tear from his eye and admitted that he didn't expect life on the streets to be so tough. All he had wanted was a chance at a normal life. In response, Dayob's tone softened. He confessed that everyone in the group understood that feeling, knowing firsthand what it's like to go through tough times. Dayob leaned closer, adding that if Dajun wanted, he could continue living with them. They wouldn't treat him as a servant anymore. Dajun felt warmth spread through him, a genuine smile gracing his lips. He couldn't remember the last time he felt so accepted. Determined to enjoy the rest of the night, they continued their banter, wondering aloud where Hangul had disappeared to this time. Little did Dajun know, his life was about to take a new turn, one that brought him even closer to the gang. After the gas incident, everything changed. Dajun wasn't relegated to sleeping in the laundry room anymore. Now he shared the same mattress with the other guys, although it got a bit uncomfortable with everyone piled together. He also began speaking informally to them, as they felt more like friends than strangers. Household chores, though, were a different story. Dajun had assumed that they would be divided equally among the group, but it turned out that everyone's part-time jobs often got in the way. As a result, the bulk of the tasks fell on him and Hangul. Frustrated, Dajun brought this up with Hangul, only to be met with a surprising response. Hangul declared himself as the gang's leader, implying that he was exempt from chores. He argued that his responsibility was to teach Dajun how to fight. However, when Dayob got wind of this arrangement, he didn't hold back. He kicked Dajun out of the house, stating that if he wanted to live as their equal, he needed to contribute like everyone else. They would only teach him to fight once he had earned his keep. With a heavy heart, Dajun accepted this verdict. So, Dajun embarked on the journey of finding a job. Hajung, one of the kinder members, bid him farewell with well wishes, promising to hold down the fort and keep the place clean. And as Dajun set out to prove his worth, Dajun scored a job at a pizzeria on the edge of the neighborhood. He's only been there 2 days, but he's already thinking about quitting. The customers are super mean and shout when he doesn't get their orders right. The owner is no better. He's told Dajun to stop being so useless, and even asked him to work on the weekend, even though he never explained the job properly. Feeling like he should find another job, he pretends he needs to use the bathroom. Just as he's about to leave, he bumps into a gorgeous girl. She calls the owner her dad and asks about Dajun. The girl, Nayun, says he's the new guy and needs to be trained because they're really busy. Dajun turns all red because of this girl. He admits that the job is still tough and that girls have never really been interested in him. But then, Nayun looks at him all serious and calls him cute. This surprises him and makes him think he might give the job another chance. What he doesn't know is that this meeting is going to change his life in a big way. Meanwhile, in a narrow alley, Cho Hangul is surrounded by knocked-out gang members. One of them begs for mercy, while Hangul steps on his face. Without any kindness, Hangul tells the guy to talk to someone and bring him the person who gassed them all. If he doesn't, Hangul threatens to find and finish him off. At Pizzeria Papa, Dajun watches Nayun in awe. She's amazing at tossing pizza dough in the air and catching it. She even helps him open a tough jar of pickles without making fun of him. When she accidentally breaks a plate, she cleans it up and checks if he's okay. She promises not to tell her dad about the broken plate to keep him out of trouble. In his head, Dajun thinks of her as an angel. He's grateful to Take for talking to the owner and getting him this job. He even dreams of staying there for his whole life. Once, in a regular day at the pizzeria, Nayun Dajun was doing her job when something unexpected happened. A customer, who seemed to be in a bad mood, started yelling at her when she politely asked him not to smoke inside. To everyone's shock, he not only yelled, but also accidentally spilled his drink all over Nayun. The anger inside her began to boil, and she felt the urge to teach the rude customer a lesson. But just as she was about to step forward, the owner of the pizzeria intervened, holding her back. He assured her that his daughter was all right and took matters into his own hands. The boss walked over to the irate customer and offered his sincere apologies for Nayun's actions, blaming it on her being new to the job. He even offered to refill the man's drink as a way to make amends. To the surprise of everyone, the customer, though still looking offended, decided to leave without causing more trouble. This reaction left Dajun baffled. Why would the boss let the customer off the hook so easily? What will happen next? Find out next time by staying tuned for our future recaps. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more great recaps.